So welcome back to Bootstrap 5, Lesson 3 on developing an e-commerce user interface, Part 2. So we had actually tackled the first part, and this project is actually to practice on the Bootstrap. Now, this is more of developing an e-commerce platform, but remember, we are only focusing on the user interface. And so far, if you remember on the last part 1 of our project, we had actually implemented the navigational bar, but of course, we were not through with the navigation. We had only tried to apply the logo, tried to align some of the navigational links. And of course, if you look at the end, we have like the card, these icons. So today I want us to enhance, to ensure that this becomes like a good or a real navigational bar so that we can proceed to the other part of the site. So let me welcome you once again, and let's pick it from where. So if you look at what I have currently here, this is, of course, the documentation we had actually attached, and we had done the navigational bar, which of course we had actually placed it in a way that it's so nice. And we were only to work on some few areas and of course applying the CSS and the styling. And for this scenario, most of the applications or most of the classes that I've applied here is actually the Bootstrap classes. And remember, for Bootstrap classes, compared to the CSS, it's more of a built-in function. They are more built-in function because when you talk about nav link, this is a class that has more features. And of course, this is linked or connected to styling the link itself. When you talk about the new item, it's also another one. You talk about PXY, you talk about PY2. So a lot of this is more Bootstrap classes. But again, that does not mean that you can derail or you can kind of limit yourself from not using the external CSS or just CSS. So if you look at the left part of my page, I want us to apply some styles on the nav. If you look at this, we have the nav here, starting from that point up to this point. So I want us to apply some of the effects so that we can actually achieve the so-called navigational bar. For now, we cannot say that we have a navigational bar because yes, you can actually see that you have some sort of links, but the way it appears is not yet qualified to be referred to as a navigational bar, because a navigational bar has to have a good way of arrangement that runs either horizontally or at some point you can also have it vertically. So if you look at, of course, we are using the Bootstrap 5.02 distribution. That's why we downloaded it. And under we have the CSS. So these are Bootstrap. And under it, again, we also have some bits of JS. But apart from that, I want us to use an external CSS. And I created a folder called CSS in my previous video. And then here we have a file called main.css. Main.css. Now, when you want to apply styles.css or actually the external CSS, if you look at my code here, you'll be able to have a reference because you must make sure that you link the two files. So how can you say that index.html file is actually linked to main.css file? So we are using what you call the custom CSS. So I want us to do this so that we can complete the project and not to leave it hanging. And now, because we have connected, and this is the connection point, the CSS /main.css. So once we finish on applying the styles on the navigational part, as long as it has the same, it has the Bootstrap classes, no problem. We can still apply the styles. I mean, just the normal CSS. So I'll go to the main.css file. And on the main.css file, remember you can also use some external font styles. For example, you can actually go to font, let's talk of like Google Fonts. And then you have like Google Fonts. You can click on Google Fonts. This is when you want to use or to have customized fonts. And assume that you want to have a font style. Let's say we have a font style like, let me look, we have something like called Kaisei. Yeah, you can see we have this CSS. So if you look at it, you can actually have Kaisei Tokumin. This is actually like a font style. So if you click at it, it's assumed that I'm taking that. It will give you some of these styles. And at some point, you can just click get font. Let me see, get font. Now, once you click get font, you can actually have, let's say, get embedded code. Let me click on get embedded code. And if you look at it, let me copy this style here. So I can copy this style here, just like that. Right click, copy. Then from this point, let me come and apply here. So what I'm doing here, I want to import, and then I give the URL, and then into brackets, I can do that and paste. So of course, minus, I'll remove that. Let me see how it works. Yeah, so you have the font, and of course, through the font, I want us to see whether we can, okay, let me just get rid of this. Yeah, to swap. Even this one is not the link, so I want to remove the HTTP. Even that. Yes, so let me have something similar to this. Now, from this particular point, because you have imported this CSS, you have actually imported this CS, you need to make sure that you make a reference. Now, if you remember the name of the classes, the styles I have used, is actually called Kaisei Tokumi. And first of all, in line to application, I will use what you call the full colon root. Now, what does this mean? The full colon root is actually a selector, which is always used to define global CSS variables. Now, and you are only going to use this to define the global CSS variables by, of course, having some snippets. So what do we mean by this? So I can actually come there and have something similar to this. So I can have hyphen log, not even log. Remember, we have the screen sizes. This one is for the large screen sizes. So I want to make sure that the same font styles applies on the large screens. So I will come and give the same name, like I say, what's it called? Tokumin. If you remember the names are actually here. So Tokumin. And then from there, I can have something like, I can even add like serif. And then, okay, so semicolon. Let me come another one, SM, font. And then now I can just use, because okay. So I have sans serif. sans serif. And then I can assume that I need to have a pink color. And let me kind of give it hexadecimal like hash E5. This is just random. 3, 4, 5, let's say B. Now, if you look at the first part, we're talking about this font. I don't know what's not happening here, but let's just try and see. So we have, for example, the -FG font. Now, this is actually a set to this font called Kaisei Tokumin, which is a serif font. And for this one, I intend to use it for larger text. I intend the second one to use it in smaller text. I intend the last one to define the actual color, which is presumably for the a minute. So when it comes to this, I want to make sure that, let me give it like a space. I want to see what's not happening here. So we have Poppins. Is it this? Is it the, we have that. Okay, let me have it like that. But the actual way, the way it's supposed to do is that I'm actually importing all the font family for this particular style. And of course, these are some of the font families that exist, or some of the font styles that exist in this part. Now, I don't know if I remove the Kaisei like that, remove this, okay. So we assume that everything is okay up to that point. But remember, you can do this, or you can, you can do it without or with, because you are trying to define the font style that is going to be used across the entire page. Now, the most important aspect again is probably where you can start from, is actually to define probably the font family for the entire body. You can come and talk of font family, and through this font family, you can actually have this part, like you want to have a variable font style, but remember it's more of a font family, which means it's a group of, it's an umbrella of font families. So I want this font family to actually capture, so I need to have like the small fonts. Remember, this one is for the smaller texts, So at some point, you might be prompted to actually use some of these styles or some of these fonts. Now, so if you look at the font family I have here, it's more of a property for the body, because the body is an element. And what I'm trying to do, I'm trying to set the value of the CSS variable to SM-font. That means for the smaller text. And this means that the body text will be displayed using the font specified by the -SM-font, which is of course a variable, and which means that it is actually linked to what we have here, SM-font. So we have like the Poppins and of course the sans serifs and the rest. So going forward now, we want to give a background color. So by now we know that since we can use this class name like .bg primary, and if you look at it, this again is a color, or is actually how to apply a color using Bootstrap. So if you go to this part, you might not miss to have, let me see whether I have BG. Yeah, for example, you can have BG primary here. So by default, this is a It's a class, but remember, if it's based on Bootstrap, it's going to give me like a background color. But in this scenario, when I use .bg and then primary, it means that it's a class name and I want to assign some colors. So in this scenario, you can just have a background color. I want us to use a variable. Remember, we have a background color here called pink, and I want to use this hyphen pink. So I'll come and use that. I don't know why it's not giving me that particular, like in white color. So again, if you look at it, it's more of, it's actually an element. .bg hyphen primary is actually a class which represents an element. And this class, my intention is to set the background color to the value of the CSS variable, which is hyphen pink. And when I talk of width, for example, if I do important. So important means what? It is actually there to ensure that the CSS variable overrides any other background color styles applied in line or via other CSS rules. So for this one is going to be very important. So it means that whatever the color that is already established, this particular color assigned here is going to override the rest of colors or any other color. Now, another part here we want to also apply is .btn, and I'm going to have something different here. And I'm going to have, for example, nav, I want btns. Remember, this one is a more a class. So I'm going to have like dots because we have the availability of this. So when you come to the button, starting from this point, like these buttons, you see we have like btn. So we have nav btns. These are classes because initially we had some buttons. So I'll come here on top of .nav btns. And from here, I'm going to have like, I need just to have the button. So I'm in line to the button. So let me give the color so that I can explain. So number one, we need to have the background color. Let me give it like white. Number two, I want to have the color. And this one, I'm going to have like the RGB. Now you can use the red, green, blue. Is that called the, is it the hexadecimal? Yes, where you can have like 85, 85, 85, but you can go with your color. I can even decide that let me give it like red. I can go with the padding. So for the padding, let me give it something like px, 10 pixels, 28 pixels. Border radius, let me give something like 25 pixels. And then for the border alone, let me give it like 1 pixel solid RGB into bracket. Okay, instead of having it with red. Now, this snippet or this particular point here, the buttons has a class which is .btn. Now, if we go to the buttons, let's have a look at the buttons and see whether we had a class called btns. But of course, if you look at here, we have nav-btns. We have the button. Yeah, so we're talking about the buttons up here. So we have the type is button. We have the type is button. Okay, but the btn. Now, if you look at this particular class, So we are talking about a button, .btn. Now, if you go to this part, because our buttons has to start from this point, our buttons has to start from this point. So we have this class. I can change this class to btn, or you can even just leave it like that. And then instead of this point, we can have like buttons instead of, so you can have button, is it btn button? Let me have a look at it. Yeah, button. So you can have button, full colon not, and then nav btns, and then button. Now, in this scenario, if, for example, I save my work from this perspective, go to save your work in this perspective, right click and open in browser. Now still nothing happens, nothing happens. And this is because we need more of this, we need more of this. I feel like I had the btn somewhere. The btn class, okay. So let's proceed. Now, what this has to do. So this is actually a class which is called buttons or dot buttons. And this class excludes, you see, for example, when you talk about not actually exclude buttons with the class, this one. Any class with any class .nav, or whenever you get .nav btns, it's going to exclude. It's like an exclusion. And then it sets the background color to white. So whenever we have this class, it's going to be excluded from these styles. That's why we are talking about buttons, or you can talk about btns whenever you write them, like btn or btns whenever you do. So make sure that whenever you are talking about a class name and then .not, it means that whatever the classes that are going to be declared in between are going to be excluded. Now, going forward, we want also to apply another one. Let's talk of .btn, because for that I'm getting from directly from the Bootstrap part. And then let me talk about not. Again, I want to also do the same. So I'm going to capture here again the same story, put it here. And then in this scenario, we are going to have, this time round, I want to do over. So I want to have like background color. So I want us to try. Remember that we have that one constant variable, and this is actually called the pink color. I don't know what's giving me in white, but probably it's because based on my editor. I want to give color white. I want to give border color. Let me have var the same pink. Hope it will pick. And from here we are through with this is more of the buttons. This is more of the buttons. This is more of the buttons. And yeah, remember that we had this. So I'm going to kind of now replace with button. This one is button. Because why? If you come to our text here, we're talking about the buttons. The button starts from here. And then you can see that under this button, we have this type. Type is actually button. So for the class, we have btn relative. Okay, so we have the button. And remember, when you have a reference of a button in Bootstrap, we normally have this btn, next bench log so we can have it in. So this one is more of a Bootstrap class, btn. So it knows automatically that it's a button. It knows automatically that it's a button. Now, let's come to the text color. Let's come to the text color. So I'm giving some. So when it comes to the text color, we can actually do like, let's say dot. And if you look at it, we are looking at the text color, but this time around I'm using like the Bootstrap way. So I can talk of dot text and then hyphen primary. This is how to apply a color to a text using Bootstrap. So again, I'm using CSS part, but this time I'm also making some references of the Bootstrap. So I can still have the pink color, and this time around I can talk of important. Remember that important is more overriding. Important is more of overriding. Now, from here, let's go to the navigational bar now. Let's go to the nav bar. So I'll come here and talk of nav bar. Now, the nav bar itself, because we have to make a reference of this particular file here, the nav bar actually starts from this point. And you can see that you have these classes. You have nav bar. These are Bootstrap classes. We have nav bar expand. We have nav bar light. And I think we spoke about this. So I want to take this class first and apply some styles here. So remember, it's a class. And then on the other side, it's more of a Bootstrap class. So when it comes to this, when it comes to .navbar class, how do we represent or how do we apply some styles? How do we apply some styles? According to the okay. So when it comes to the .navbar, we have some of the styles, and we have style, which of course we need to kind of do some offsetting. We need some, either you want to do like horizontal offset, you want to do some vertical offset. And let me just there's something called WebKit, and this is more of offsetting. Assume that I want to apply some shadow. So you can have something like that, hyphen WebKit, hyphen box, hyphen shadow. And then you can talk about 03px, 9px, 3px. So we have 3px, 9px, 3px, and then let me give a color like red. So if you remember on the red part, you can also do the RGB. The RGB. And you can also do 00. Remember, there are 4. I mean, they are actually like 4, but when there are 3 when you use RGB, but when you use RGBA, it's going to be 4. So you probably can have 01. I can also do like maybe put like box shadow. The same thing, probably I can capture the same scenario here. Okay. From there, we can go to navbar hyphen brand. Now on navbar hyphen brand, remember we have an image. If you pay more closer attention on the navbar brand, we have an image here, img. So that is what I'm trying to fix it here. So I can give that image a width of, let's say, 70 pixels. Then from there, we also have the same class, but this time around, we have span. We have span. We have span, I don't know, did I do this? Okay. So we have span. Okay, so you can have navbar, we paste it here. And this time down, we have span. Now, if you look again at the code, we have navbar brand, and then we have the span. So again, we will come back to the same story here. And this time round, I want to apply the letter spacing on the span. I want it to be 2 pixels. I want to have the font family, and then variable into bracket -lg font. You see now the importance of assigning or having these styles up here. So you can talk of, these are for the larger fonts, these are for smaller fonts. So you can pick for all the titles that you feel like it's going to be of higher or larger fonts, then you can use Kaisei Tokumin. If for those that will become of smaller fonts, then you can use SM font. That is how you can make a reference. And then, so let me kind of save my project and try to confirm whether there is something we are doing or not. So let right click, open in browser, and again, nothing is changing here. So let's go back to the code. Let me finish having the styles. Then we can have .navbar, nav link now. So I want to have on the link. But this time around, I want to have over. So let me have like color, then var into brackets. I can have -pink. Again, not important, that needs to overwrite. And then it go to nav -item. So if you remember, we also have that nav item. So we're talking about, if you come down here, we have this item. So we have, for example, nav item. Nav item. So we are coming here. So when you come to that part, we can have this styles. We can talk of border. Let's say border bottom. I want to have 0.5 pixels. Solid. Let's talk of RGBA. I can put the same thing we have here. And then place it like that. Now, when I go to the file now, go to the index and right click. Let's see what happens. Nothing happens. So nothing has happened up to this point. Okay. And from this perspective, we want to ensure that we have different classes. So let me just have a look at what has happened on our page. So when it comes to the styles, because one, we need to also to confirm whether everything is okay. Because we must have an impact. Sometimes we end up having some. Okay, let me just do one thing here. Let me confirm the availability of the application of this. Let me cut it from this point. Let me go to this part. I want first to see the impact. Let me just use the internal styles. Then come here and then paste it there. Make an impression appear, and nothing has changed so far. . . 。  . 。 . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . So we are talking about import URL. We see what is happening. What has happened? We missed any of the styles. Yeah, let me just go directly. These changes, open in browser. Let's see what happens. Okay, this probably could be one of the files. Let me go to CSS. Let me try get rid of this part. Let me see what has happened. Okay, let me come again. Let me click, open in browser. Yeah, look at that. Look at that. Look at this. I don't know what has happened because it's supposed to work. But after removing this, probably this is not well architectured. Because I was wondering before, what is happening with the white color, white hyphens. But now assume that we are working without this one, or that part. If you look at it, you see, this is actually what I'm talking about. Is exactly what I'm talking about. So you can have like a smooth and running navigational bar. So this is actually the navigational bar I was talking about. So if you can go through all this information, like putting these classes, putting these styles on the CSS part, then you will end up achieving what we've just achieved. So up to this particular point, is going to be the end of part 2. But remember, we still have part 3 and we still have part 4, just to ensure that we've actually achieved, or say that we've developed an e-commerce user interface using Bootstrap 5. So up to that point, let's stop and see you on the next video.